Yesterday, Vice President candidate Tim Walz said Donald Trump doesn't know the first thing about service, but can Walz claim the high ground now after quitting his military duties before he was deployed to Iraq?
It certainly makes it very difficult for Vice President Harris and team at this point to defend something like that. And it looks like it's going to be something that they're going to continue defending throughout the remainder of this cycle. Obviously, this was a tactical choice by Vice President Harris and her team to choose Walz as a countermeasure to Senator J.D. Vance, obviously having served in the United States Marine Corps. So attempting to state that not only does Donald Trump have someone that has worn the uniform, but we also possess somebody that has done the same. This is going to be something that's going to be very difficult for them to defend moving forward and is really going to throw a wrench in this operation.
It'll be interesting to watch. Now, historian and scholar Victor David Hanson appeared on Dr. Scott Atlas's podcast calling out the dangers and the use of lawfare to prosecute Donald Trump by Joe Biden and his party. Here it is.
Charles Manson didn't earn 500 indictments. So it's a use of the levers of government to warp elections and to be exempt from the consequences of their activity.
So, Professor, isn't using the DOJ and agencies like the FBI against political opponents, is that not the real threat to democracy?
It's certainly, if you were to interpret it from the realm of the American framers, I think that they would absolutely say that is the case, that the American Republic and our Constitution is established so that it's not the people that should be fearful of the government. It should actually be the other way around. So anytime that a bureaucracy or any type of a bureaucracy at that is mechanized or politicized in order to go after a political opponent is very much against the spirit of what the American framers had actually instituted at the 1787 convention. And it's something that we're going to see continue. More evidence is going to come out on that weaponization as well moving into the future.
I know you worked in Washington before going to Liberty. I want to get your thought on this. Squad member Cori Bush will not be returning to Washington as she lost her Democrat primary to St. Louis prosecuting attorney Wesley Ball last night. But I want you to hear a clip from her concession speech.
Let's talk about what it really is. Because see, now I don't have to worry about some strings that I have attached, and as much as I love my job. But all they did was radicalize me, and so now they need to be afraid.
All right, that doesn't sound like congratulations to her opponent. It sounds more like a threat to America. Your thoughts?
I think that the emotions may have been running a little bit high after that defeat the other night. This is something that if Representative Bush is going to claim that her defeat has done nothing but radicalize her from a political and from a strategic perspective, that's not going to work well in her favor. Not only because she lost to a more moderate member of the Democratic Party, but also this is something that Democrats, especially the progressive wing of the party, have continued to lose. You've seen 8 or 9 different members of the House Progressive Caucus that have lost, meaning that Democrats themselves are very worried and that they're tired of this very progressive agenda that they're seeing taking charge of their party. And they obviously rejected that again last night.
Now, Congressman Bob Good is a friend and a regular guest on Victory News. He was primaried out of his seat this November. Talk for a moment about his political legacy.
Yeah, I think it's one that, depending on who you would ask, it's one that had a very quick ascension and one that was very successful, but also one that ultimately had a very quick descension, very quick decline, and one that ultimately ended in some failure. Congressman Good was extraordinary as as chair of the House Freedom Caucus at blocking a lot of legislation that he deemed to be unconstitutional, especially those on spending packages. Mm-hmm. He was unashamed and lived up to all of his campaign promises of taking on the swamp. It just seems that really the sin that he had throughout it, so to speak, throughout the entirety of the campaign was that he didn't initially endorse Donald Trump.
There it is.
And that's ultimately what led to his demise. Yep.
Right. Visit liberty.edu and discover and click on the School of Government. Find out more about the Professor Van Allen. Thanks for joining us today, sir. Thanks for being on Victory.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Mike?
Greg on Flashpoint Tuesday night. Gene Bailey, Mike Lindell, Joseph Z, and Rick Green discussed Democrat Kamala Harris' choice of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz was governor and Tim Frey was the mayor, of Minneapolis during the riots that burned down part of the city after the death of George Floyd in the summer of 2020.
We said several times back then that if Jacob Fay had not said to the police, let them burn down the police precinct, it would have all stopped right there. But he actually said, let them vent. And I always blamed it on the mayor for the longest time. And Mike and Joseph could probably speak to this better than I could. But it did come out later that he was in conversations with the governor. The governor supported this stuff as well and allowed it to happen. And the speech you just played tells you why. He's a Marxist. He's a DEI Marxist. And one thing back to what Joseph was saying, because I don't know if he meant to say it this way or not, but when he said, no, you move, I had to think about my Captain America watch, because Captain America says the same thing to Spider-Man in the Civil War in 1980s comic books. He says, when the whole world's telling you something right or something wrong is right, when everybody, the media, press, is everybody telling you to move, your job is to plant yourself by the river of truth and say, no, you move. Well, folks, I think Joseph's right. This is our chance right now. Use Walz to now remind everybody of how bad this BLM and Antifa thing was across the country. Compare that to what they're doing to the J6 defendants, even to this day, still rotting in jail because of the injustice in this country. And it's time for us to tell them to move. And so I'm with both Joseph and Mike. I think this is a praise the Lord moment.
I meant to say Jacob Fry as the mayor of Minneapolis. You can watch this and all of the other episodes of Flashpoint at govictory.com/flashpoint. Tim. Right now, let's talk with the host of that No Doubt About It podcast, Victory News contributor Mark Ronchetti. Mark, as you just heard, Governor Walz allowed babies that were born alive during failed abortions to die. What does that tell us about his so-called neighborly socialism he touts to the public?
Yeah, Mike, I think what we're looking at with him, and it's what this gives us a window into is the extremism of Kamala Harris, too, because what this does is double down on that. And Mike, you sort of mentioned it, not only with the life issue, but Tim Walz said that the Constitution is no guarantee against misinformation. Well, who determines what misinformation is? And so that's scary in and of itself. And by the way, there is a guarantee. It's called the First Amendment. And not only that, but the whole socialism portion of this, you're right, is neighborly. Look, this is a double down. And so it's incumbent upon the Trump campaign to point this out and make this a campaign about policy and about not only where Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have taken us, but where they would take us going further here. And they have to begin to point that out. Mike, they have to focus on that like a laser beam here, because as we're clearly seeing, the media is going to do everything they can to make sure Kamala Harris does not have to answer a question. And I think this is like nothing we've ever seen in a presidential campaign. Watching the media marry up with a presidential candidate, it is really distressing.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, well, Gen Z influencer Aiden Ross spoke to his 7 million followers after interviewing Donald Trump this week.
How is it brave to do a stream with a former president and soon-to-be president of the United States of America? It makes zero sense. How does this make me brave? You know what I mean? It makes literally zero sense. Zero sense because of brand deals.
So Ross said a lot of celebrities who privately endorsed Donald Trump reached out to him saying they could not do the same because of contract agreements. Mark, do you think Donald Trump is actually more beloved in the entertainment industry than the media really lets on?
You're not going to like this answer. I don't care. I don't care how popular he is with people in Hollywood or people in the Silicon Valley. I care about policy and about working American families that right now are paying 30% more for groceries, who aren't safe in the communities that they live in, where we don't have a border which is secure and is allowing people into this country that would do us harm. Let's start focusing on those issues, because that's what's important. I don't even know who Aiden Ross is. And Mike, that's probably because I'm not that cool. But still, the point being, focus on the issues that are important to the American people and get out there. We need to see more of the president and more of J.D. Vance on the offensive as well if we want any chance to win this election. All the interest right now is being swallowed up on one side, and that's got to stop. And it's not going to be going on YouTube streams that's going to change it.
All right, Mark. Now, be sure to catch Mark's latest No Doubt About It podcast on YouTube. Mark, great to have you on Victory News. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mike.